Hi, welcome to the Forecasting for Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brie. I'm a doctor of psychology, financial educator, astrologer, and founder of Forecasting for Success, a community of people improving their financial literacy to achieve financial independence. I blend my expertise as a former professor and financial intelligence analyst with the tool of astrology to help break down why you are struggling with specific money habits and the best way to form more intentional responses and choices when it comes to money, especially to help you feel more secure in your financial decisions and improve your money skills for building long-term wealth. Welcome back to Forecasting for Success, the podcast where astrology, personal finance, and spiritual self-discovery meet the real world. Today's episode is a really special one. I'm inviting you to sit in on a live natal chart reading with a brand new client who is also one of my youngest sister's closest friends. We'll be diving into her chart to uncover her natural strengths, challenges, and patterns around money, and then translating that insight into real-world financial steps. Along the way, I'll be answering some of her money questions, like where to even begin when you're brand new to investing and how to confidently take those first steps into the stock market. If you've ever wondered how astrology can guide you towards financial decisions that feel both aligned and practical, this is the perfect episode for you. So grab your notebook, get comfortable, and let's explore how your birth chart can become a roadmap to building wealth and confidence with money. So welcome, Erica. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So what can I help you with today? What questions do you have?
I'm interested in what's going on up in the sky, the stars and the planets, and how it might be affecting me. And I want to talk more about how I can be more responsible with my finances.
Oh, excellent. That's a really good question. That's definitely what I like helping people with. So before we get started and get into the astrology and the money questions, we're going to go ahead and share your birth information. And so
Mhm.
your birthday is July 15th of 92 at approximately 10 p.m. in Ocala, Florida. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. If I was off, then this would go wildly awry. So it's good that I got those details right. So what immediately stood out to me whenever I looked at your natal chart is that you have something called a grand cross. And this aspect means that you have four planets that are all square each other in the same quality or the same modality. And in your case, these planets are fixed, which means that the energy speaks to preservation or stabilization. So for any astrologers that are listening to this episode, your grand cross, it consists of Mars in the third house in the sign of Taurus, and that's at 22 degrees and 36 minutes. You've got Mercury in your sixth house and the sign of Leo at 16 degrees and 51 minutes. Pluto is in the ninth house and its sign of rulership of Scorpio at 20 degrees and 13 minutes. And then you have Saturn in your 12th house and the sign of Aquarius at 16 degrees and 44 minutes. So in plain English, this rare aspect, it implies that you will experience periods of great struggle and inflexibility, but at the same time, you have strong gifts that you can use to overcome challenges and still succeed in your unique way. So you do have to be cautious about not subconsciously seeking out or attracting drama to
Mhm.
you because the goal is not to attract hardship just for the sake of proving that you have the capacity to overcome difficulties. The true goal with this aspect is to find your center and not allow outside events or people to pull you away from your center. So life is going to challenge you with this aspect, which does have the ability to unlock your greatest potential in life, because this lifetime is asking you to learn how to maintain healthy balance and harmony for yourself. So if you're unable to center yourself and hold firm on healthy boundaries, it means you would more consistently have inner tension and be less likely to actively live and practice your greatest level and abilities or potential. So a solution, if you will, is to learn how to embody and practice being strategic rather than being impulsive. And this will take practice. It's important to be honest with yourself and really learn how to pause and take a breath and prove to yourself that you really have used critical thinking skills and logic to have a genuine strategy before acting on something and not just referring to your emotional intelligence and or your intuition as a quote strategy. And don't get me wrong, there is absolutely a time and a place for your intuition and your emotional intelligence. So I do not mean that these are negative. We absolutely need them. It just means that this aspect is asking you to learn how to balance and use both appropriately throughout your life. And since you have a fixed Grand Cross, this specifically, I guess I should say, you specifically need to learn how to safely get out of your comfort zone. It means that you need to take time to weigh pros and cons when you really need to push yourself to grow as a person and not remain small or be in a small space or keep yourself in a small box just because that's familiar and comfortable to you. It's really important that you take time to learn how to act strategically to safely get out of your comfort zone that will genuinely help you grow as a person. So, a grand cross, it means you have a real possibility and a real potential of becoming an accomplished and significant person in this lifetime, meaning that the unique hardships and lessons learned that you experience and your personal growth in the face of these challenges not only helps yourself, but you can serve as a beneficial and helpful example to others. So, you do yourself and the world a favor if you were to try to have a system in place of writing down, let's see, how do I want to say this? I think, do you prefer writing things down or like vlogging? Do you prefer like physical notes or do you prefer like audio or visual videos, if you will?
I like writing things down.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you would do yourself and the world a favor if you were to start writing down your thoughts and feelings, because you could easily write a book in the future or create something in the future that could really help people. So whether that's a physical notebook or something digital like Evernote, if you've ever heard of the Evernote website, I would really encourage you to start doing that because I think having the ability to look back on and reflect on your notes for your thoughts and your feelings over these years of your life, I think it would really help you to be able to apply that to something that you could build in the future.
Okay.
So the reason why I mentioned that type of specific example is because you do have Mars in the third house, which means that knowledge is power. And then you have the North Node at an Aries point in your 11th house. So in English, the North Node is something that will begin to activate after the age of 40. So you do have some time here. But taking notes now, it'll be helpful for you, like I said, to reflect on and to look back on, because the North Node is really important. It's one of three key elements that are represented in our natal charts, and these hold the key to our personal transformation. So when you put in the work to these areas, these key areas like the North Node, your life will improve and evolve in ways that you never would have thought possible. So this kind of gives you a bit of a head start in this area compared to other people that only start learning about this once they get to the age of 40 or beyond. In the 11th house specifically, this represents your friends and your community or communities to include groups, clubs, networks, etc., as well as your wishes, your hopes, and your dreams. So your North Node being at an Aries point, this means that the work you put into this element of your life is more visible to others, or that you could be more visible to others, compared to this just being something internally that you experience alone. And a North Node in the sign of Capricorn, it's asking you, and again, this is after the age of 40. It's just something to have in the back of your mind until you get to that point in your life. So this is asking you to learn how to embody responsibility to both yourself and others. So it means to learn how to be independent in a balanced and harmonious way rather than over relying on others. And Capricorn energy is very foundational based, meaning building solid foundations and groundwork. And the North Node in Capricorn in the 11th house at an Aries point, it means that you have the capacity to establish some type of group or community one day, either in person or virtually, if this interests you, if either of these interest you, to really serve as an example to others and help others in your very unique way. And so this is why taking notes sometimes about your journey in life could be helpful and useful in the future to refer back on with accuracy, specific accuracy about your thoughts and feelings in the moment. If you wanted to write a book, start a community, or whatever it is that you might envision one day and want to take from your dreams and bring your idea into reality.
Okay, awesome. I'm getting hung up on the hardships.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, it's okay.
Mhm. A lot of it resonates and makes sense, but I'm just like thinking, is it like common for people to have I forgot what you referred to it as, the Grand Cross and it being fixed and just making life harder?
No, it's quite rare. It really means that you wanted a specific set of challenges in this life because the point is to overcome the challenge so that you can do something with it. So you'll evolve as a person, of course. You're going to learn and be a different person one day on purpose in a very specific way to teach yourself something. But with this aspect, it means you can do something more with it. You can help others in a very unique way from whatever it is in your journey that you're going to learn and overcome through the process. And so we can get really into detail about what this means.
Mhm.
So, what I can do is I can talk about these very unique placements and what they represent and how they present themselves in your day to day life, like what it means and what you can do with these aspects. So, if you want, we can start with Mars in Taurus in your third house.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Mars being in Taurus, it's actually in detriment. And what this means is Mars is uncomfortable in this sign. It just means that Mars to its core is really all about action and results and quickness. But Taurus is rather slow and stubborn energy, and it likes to take a long time to think things over first before deciding if it even wants to take any action. But once you have made up your mind, there's no stopping you. So once you've committed to something, you're all in. It just kind of takes you a long time to convince yourself that you are all in. And that's why
Mhm.
there's this element of frustration or friction whenever it comes to taking action and how to take action, like what steps you're going to take in reality in order to move forward with an idea or move forward with an activity. So you do have the capacity with this placement to manifest what you want. And like I said, knowledge is power for you. You do have a really sharp and quick mind that would make you an excellent debater, for example, if you are really passionate about something. And you also have the ability to talk people into things. It's just important to check in with yourself to ensure that you're not going too far at times and trying to like force your opinion or way of thinking onto others. But you do have the capacity to make a really solid argument and can be very helpful and useful in order to help either yourself or others.
Mhm.
And with your Mars, it's opposite to Pluto. And Pluto, like I said, is in the sign of rulership in Scorpio, meaning it's really comfortable in this sign. This is where Pluto wants to be. And your Pluto and some other placements that I see in your chart, it really indicates that you have an excellent intuition and the ability to kind of just know things sometimes. If you might have keyed into that before, where you just kind of intuitively seem to know what to do or know what to say, if that's ever happened to you before, because there's several placements in your chart that show that you just kind of have this ability to just key in to really important information or really key into what's needed in the moment. And Pluto's placement in the ninth house, it points to being interested in changing the world, or at least learning and achieving new things by experiencing the world or even traveling the world. And whenever we were first communicating about doing this episode, you did mention that you were kind of interested in Amsterdam or interested in moving from your current location. Is that something that's still important to you?
Yes, it feels like something that could be possible in the next 2 to 5 years, depending on how I handle getting my license as a therapist, whether that's in Florida, Oregon, wherever, and then workshopping, having my telehealth business in another country. And for some reason, I'm called to Amsterdam. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned the West Coast. Is that because the West Coast is comfortable to you because you've been there before?
Yes, I've always been drawn to Oregon and Washington, and I just feel more grounded there. I feel like I feel more energetic. Like in the mornings, I don't feel as groggy, for example.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would mention that because there you're closer to your Saturn line. So you would feel more grounded, even though in theory you could experience more challenges there,
Mm.
but you would be more grounded. Vice being closer to your Neptune line where you kind of are now. And that would be why you're kind of foggy. You can't quite get your fingers around something or grasp onto something solid. And so that definitely makes sense about where you're living now. I did do a real quick glance at Amsterdam, and it technically would be a bit better in some ways than the West Coast. And Amsterdam's unique because Netherlands has the DAFT visa, the Dutch American Friendship Treaty visa. I don't know if you've ever looked into this before, but I can send you some information on that. But what was really curious to me is that Amsterdam's really close to London, and London is where you scored quite high. So whenever I looked at your astrology for London, that is where everything was off the charts. Like you have incredible ability there to have very robust and healthy friendships, romantic relationships, an incredible professional, career. Like everything just scored really, really high for you in London. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to put that in the back of your mind in case you wanted to do any research for that area. But regardless of where you might move to, obviously there are many steps to work through. And money is involved in that as well, making sure that you financially could do things in order to get yourself where you want to be. So we'll get into that some more here in a bit.
Okay, very interesting.
So, getting back to this Mars Pluto opposition in your Grand Cross, this placement is asking you to learn how to appropriately be in conflict through trial and error. So, this placement is asking you, or this aspect, it's asking you to learn how to have healthy boundaries when conflict is necessary and how to manage your own emotions, actions, words, and expectations when needing to overcome conflict. So, with this type of opposition, unfortunately, it can make your ego more easily threatened, which means that if you're triggered, you're much more quick to being defensive. So, you have this energy to where you can take on this quote, I will go down with the ship mentality and just want to like burn everything to the ground. And you just want to charge ahead without thinking through second and third order effects. And that's what's really important for you to learn in life is thinking through pausing and thinking through second and third order effects and trying to be more strategic rather than reactionary. And so it also means that you do need to be cautious as well in romantic relationships because it's scary to know that the same person whom you love is also the same person who could end up hurting you. And so you can sometimes swing between wanting to avoid people altogether or avoid relationships altogether, and then swing over to potentially staying in a dysfunctional relationship longer than what's necessary or healthy. So it's important to clearly understand before entering into a relationship, what are your boundaries? And logically understanding before any emotions get involved, why it is healthy and necessary to end a relationship if a boundary is crossed and the other person's actions are showing you that they are not willing to respect you and your boundaries to get to a healthy place with you as a unit or team. So once emotions are involved and before there's a clear understanding reached within your mind, it's harder to be alone when you'd rather be partnered. And that's the work. That's the difficult work of showing yourself in the universe. You're learning this difficult lesson of respecting yourself and your healthy, necessary boundaries to be grounded and centered and balanced in this life, even when things get hard. And technically, this is how money relates to things like this. Because if you do experience the need to walk away from a relationship, for example, one day, then you would need the resources like money to do so in order to protect yourself physically and emotionally and not have to delay your health and well being just due to something like money. And of course, we'll get into this more as we get through the information. So, lastly, with this Grand Cross aspect, we have your Saturn and Mercury opposition. So your Saturn is in one of its rulership signs of Aquarius in your 12th house. And so thankfully, it's also quite comfortable. And this really gives you a boost in your natural ability to solve complex problems and again, be very sharp mentally. So this placement shows you that you're a nonconformist and would enjoy having others recognize your personal authority that stems from your unique individualism and original ideas. And what I always find humorous about this placement is that you really do want to help people and make the world a better place, but you like people as a large or abstract group, and maybe not so much when you have prolonged periods of one-on-one time. So people up close can be not as fun and maybe sometimes a bit icky, but you do have the capacity to help people as a group because you have the ability to expose what is hidden and speak to this with conviction and emotion that is really striking to people mentally and emotionally. So your work in psychology makes sense, especially with this placement in the 12th house, because this is an additional layer of compassion and sensitivity where you're able to give concrete form to subconscious ideas and feelings, which is why I wanted you to lean into developing a better, and I should say, a deeper inner wisdom that can guide people through difficult times. And another reason why it's important for you to develop a healthy center and balance to your life is because this placement can make you feel as if you owe a debt to society that you need to pay off via service to others. So just remember, it's really important that you make time for yourself, especially alone time where you can recharge and recenter and ground yourself consistently throughout your lifetime. And it also plays into difficulty in keeping a balanced, healthy relationship with others because you may unconsciously be afraid of intimacy by losing yourself and losing your autonomy to the relationship or to the other person. So, once again, it's asking you to learn and maintain healthy boundaries for yourself as an individual and as a member of a unit. And of course, that takes practice and learning how to be vulnerable in a healthy way or in a healthy environment. And this Saturn placement is opposite your Mercury in Leo in your sixth house. And this is what gives your words authority and conviction. This placement in the sixth house, it means you enjoy unique and specialized knowledge, as well as work that stimulates your mind and work that allows you to do a good job and serve others. So it's important with this placement to learn how to ask the right questions at the right time, because you may notice that your unconscious mind can sometimes try to speak to your conscious mind through physical symptoms. So, for example, if your neck sometimes is sore, rather than just absently wondering, I wonder why my neck hurts today. Instead, learn to pay attention and think, why does my neck hurt when X specifically is happening? Meaning, look for patterns that can point to being not aligned with your values or something that's challenging important boundaries that you have established and boundaries that you want to maintain. So, this placement means it's important for you to actively live the saying, mind over matter, meaning ensure you have healthy and positive mental images of yourself for both your physical and mental wellness. So it will be important for you to make time for relaxation techniques that feed your soul and mind. So find something that you enjoy, whether that's yoga or hot yoga or some type of meditation. So either a traditional meditation or even something like a walking meditation. Just something that you would enjoy and could consistently maintain over time. And lastly, what I'll say about this opposition between Saturn and Mercury, it points to a strong desire of wanting to find, quote, the answer for what is either right or wrong, since you really crave a solid answer and would prefer to offer a simple, singular solution to something. So, what life is really asking of you is to find balance and learning how to use different labels or titles or whatever's appropriate over time as you naturally evolve and change, because life just doesn't have a singular right answer. Life is more about being on a spectrum. So we and things and events, we slide along different spectrums. So there are, quote, right answers in the moment, but that doesn't make it the right answer for every person all the time in all scenarios. And that's messy, but it's okay. So it's just about learning that spectrum rather than a singularity. So those are all the major findings that I see from your fixed grand cross. And once again, the takeaway is finding a center, finding balance, and then establishing boundaries for yourself to maintain that balance. Do you have any other questions about that or anything that I might have mentioned?
There's a lot of things resonate, and I'm just taking it all in, but I don't think I have any questions at the moment. They're all swirling in my head. I can't pick one.
Yeah, that's okay. Sounds good. And then I've just got a little thing that I saw that kind of relates to this that I wanted to mention to you. And so you also have what's called a mystic rectangle, which I find very cute. It is technically just a rectangle, but that doesn't sound fancy. So, once again, for any astrologers listening, this aspect of having a mystic rectangle, it means that you have two oppositions. And in this case, Pluto is opposite to Mars, and your sun is opposite to both Neptune and Uranus that are conjunct. And it has two trines, meaning Neptune and Uranus are trine to Mars, and Pluto is trine to your sun. And then you have two sextiles, meaning Pluto is sextile to Neptune and Uranus, and then your sun is sextile to Mars. So these oppositions are what drive your success in life because you're working hard to overcome obstacles and find solutions. And then the trines and the sextiles, they bring you luck on your journey and on the outcomes. So, in plain English, what this means is you have the ability to have a successful professional life if you put in the work of getting safely outside your comfort zone, working through the challenges that life throws your way, and then finding unique ways to share your lived experience and lessons learned with others to help a group or community of your choosing. So, what this is it's really nice to have a softening, if you will, a softening of that grand cross. So, rather than just having endless obstacles or endless oppositions, what this means is you do have a softening of that. And, like I said, luck and expansion of what's possible by this additional rectangle in your chart. And so, it was really nice to see that instead of just seeing the grand cross because to me, it further emphasizes you are really meant to be pushed to go somewhere and have that mean something, not just to yourself, but to share it with, like I said, a community of your choosing. So I'm really excited for you to see where you end up in life, where you go, because you genuinely have the capacity to be known for bringing something new, bringing some type of new solution or wisdom to a group of people, a very unique group of people to help them. And so, at least in my opinion, that's very exciting.
Yes, that's I was thrown a bone.
Absolutely. So that was the major astrology, like I said, from your chart that I believe is really applicable to what's going on for you right now and something that's really important for you to keep in mind as you go through the challenges that you're likely to face and these next periods of your life. And so what's next in relation to your question is to look at your second house because your second house represents resources and money. So if that's okay with you, we can get into that aspect of your question.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So your second house doesn't have any planets inside, which is actually beneficial, in my opinion, for someone who might have some challenges with money, because the more planets you have inside of a house, the more complications could arise, the more crowded and busy it is. So there's no natal planets in this house. So instead, your second house is ruled by Aries. And what that means is you do have an eagerness to amass money, but it also gives you a propensity to spend money more rashly. And so having a real solid plan in place is really important for having consistency with your finances over time. And so you currently have, actually, let me pause there for a second. Usually what this means is whenever you have a fire sign that rules your second house, is it kind of gives a metaphorical vibe to burning through money. And so even if you have the capacity to bring a lot of money in, if there's no plan, if there's no strategy or foundation or system that you have set up for yourself, that you've proven to yourself that this works for me, then unfortunately it means that that type of energy will just burn through the resources that you accumulate. And so once again, this is why it's really important to establish a system, to have some type of foundational system for your money and other resources. So that way it can serve you in all periods of your life. So it serves you in the short term and is a system that will serve you in the long term, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so, what I do see happening is that you currently have Chiron transiting your second house. And so, right now is a really excellent time to work through some journaling exercises. So, I would ask that you do yourself a favor. And for example, on the full moon of each month, spend about 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you can spare that much time. And it would be good if you think about and write down any thoughts or emotions that come up for you about where you are spending money or otherwise expending resources that no longer serve you or are used in a way that just put a band-aid on a situation that might need more adequate medical care. So, for example, if you notice that you are spending money or spending too much time on eating out or otherwise not adequately caring for your physical health, because honestly, there's just not enough hours in the day, especially when you're trying to get through school, which I deeply relate to. So, spending money like this, it's like putting a short-term band-aid on a solution that really requires more care. So, for this example, you would need to adapt a more holistic solution to be respectful of your health, your time, and your budget. So, for instance, it would be really good if you could come up with some type of resource plan. So that's an example of something to do on the full moon. It's just to think through what's no longer serving you. That way you can identify it and make it real. And then that way you're consciously aware of what is no longer meeting your needs. And then on every new moon, you can journal about bringing in new systems for your resources and thinking about your ideal life. So use this time to come up with solutions to what you identify on the full moons or expand on and get really detailed about new systems and new resources during the new moon, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because Chiron exposes our wounds. It's things that hurt us early in life, and we now carry those wounds across our lives if we're not careful. And so, since Chiron is currently transiting your second house, that's why I want you to think specifically about your resources and your money and think of new ways to make your resources and money better to carry you into the next phase of your life. Just to be very intentional and conscious about how you might be spending money to self-soothe or not using your resources in new ways that serve you into your next phase. We just don't want to fall back on and rely on old systems and old ways of doing things just because it's habit. And so that's why now's a really good time just to make that assessment. And another reason why it's really important for you right now to get more responsible with money is that on 13 April of 2026, Neptune is going to enter your second house and it's going to hang out here for quite a while. It's going to hang out in your second house through 2039. And when Neptune is in the second house, it can make things really foggy or give you illusions about what's possible, which means that if you don't have a plan in place, it can cause carelessness or irresponsibility with money and resources. So that's why between right now and then April of next year, it's really important to become intentional and actionable with your money and ensure that your money and how you use it as a resource matches with your values. So, for example, if traveling and learning from or experiencing new cultures abroad is really important to you, then spending a large percentage of your money on other areas that no longer serve you would not be in alignment with this value and where you're trying to go in life. Because Neptune, it really tests our boundaries and it can cause us to have confusion. So if we're not prepared for a transit like this, especially whenever it comes to something like money, then the consequences could be higher than if we try to be prepared for having a test in this area of our lives. And Neptune also brings new perspectives and new ideas and new creativity. So good things come from a transit too. So I don't want to present this as just one-sided. It's not just simply negative. Once again, it is a spectrum. But because we live under capitalism, it's important to be as prepared as possible for a transit like this and just have a plan and a backup plan. And so that's why talking about money specifically and what it means to have things like a zero-based budgeting plan, emergency fund, and things like that are just really important.
Mhm.
So that's what I saw whenever it comes to your second house and where the concept of money lies in our charts. Did you have any questions from that?
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. So those were all the major astrology things that I saw for you whenever it comes to, you know, money and where you're going and some life questions that you have. So if you want to, if there were no more astrology questions, we could transition into more mundane aspects of how to handle money. So if you want, you can just take a moment and check in with yourself and see how you feel.
I think I feel like a mix of overwhelm, dread, and excitement, I guess, is in there.
That sounds
Yeah.
about right. Yeah, as long as you felt like it resonated, as long as you felt like the information was applicable to you, then that's what's important. Like I of course don't want to be off base. I want the information to be useful and potentially actionable to you. So as long as you felt like, of course, it can be very overwhelming, especially if this is something that you're hearing for the first time, because it's different from feeling it or having something in the back of your mind and then hearing it out loud. Like that is something new to experience for the first time. So it's definitely normal to need time to process the information as long as it feels like we're more or less on the right track. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does.
Okay, that's good. I think what we can do is get into some of the more mundane money questions. So I guess we can just start first with a budget because that is normally a good place where people start. Has that been something that is that something that you've ever done before? Have you ever tried to establish a budget, either roughly or even very literally, like in an Excel spreadsheet or something?
Yes, I've used spreadsheets in different apps, and then unfortunately, well, I just forget that. Not that I forget, but I don't seem to. I guess I need something more in my face. I'm also like this with my calendar and reminders. Like I'll just ignore my phone sometimes, have it on do not disturb, so I'll miss those things that are supposed to be in my face. So I think the lesson is I need some more physical, concrete things when it comes to planning and budgeting.
Gotcha. Have you found a system yet that works, or is it still to be determined? Like even just for something like a calendar, is that still something that you are trying to work on?
Yeah, with my schedule, like it gets the job done when I remember to look ahead. But with money, I'm like this with a lot of things in my life. Like I start out strong and then I fizzle out because I guess I get bored, the ADHD and whatnot, and then getting preoccupied with school. But I think, yeah, anytime I've started, I don't have a system is the answer. Currently, I do not have a system.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. No worries. Have you ever tried automating everything? And then that way it just kind of runs in the background?
I have a good amount of things automated, but I think the
Okay.
problem is the impulsive spending.
Okay. The reason why I would recommend the zero-based budgeting plan, if you're familiar with this at all or no.
Mhm. No.
So what this means is before the money is even received, every dollar is given a purpose. And so that means that, and again, that's why I would recommend automating it. So that way, as soon as the money reaches your account, it automatically is sent to all the places that it needs to go.
Mhm.
So automatically, a certain percentage is moved to, bills if there are any bills and pay for those. And of course, the consistent expenses like, rent and utilities, things like that. You pay yourself, meaning you put money in your emergency fund, in your sinking fund, in any investment accounts that you have, it automatically goes to those places. And then usually for someone who might have this type of concern with having impulse spending is that it also can be moved to a different account where spending is allowed to occur. So that means it's one card or one place where the impulse or the spontaneity is authorized to come from.
Mhm.
And so that's why if you have this type of system to where it's pre-planned and then also automated, it's less likely to just disappear.
Mhm.
And so if you want to, what I can do is I can send you a spreadsheet from my investment course, from my financial literacy course, and you can look at it and see if this makes sense for you in order to apply it to your life and whether or not this system might help you have more of a purpose and intention towards the money and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Do you have any other questions about that, about potentially using that budgeting system?
No, but it does sound better than just having all my money in one place and things being more intentional. And just because I see a certain number doesn't mean I can do whatever I want. So putting, a certain amount of money on a different card for like the have fun stuff. And then if it gets declined, it gets declined. Like I definitely need boundaries with myself around spending. I don't even do anything crazy. It's probably just the like putting a band-aid if I'm having like, a bad day or whatever. There's been times where I would order DoorDash two times in a day, or like maybe get a fancy bottle of wine to like quote unquote treat myself. But then that's great, but then future Erica is screwed over. So
Yeah,
I have to
yeah.
keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's also possible to try to pre-plan, if you will, for those moments where you really need something, either to celebrate something or to help yourself, feel better in the moment. There is a way that you can build that into your budget, to build that into the system. And then that
Mhm.
way, break in case of an emergency, either a good or a bad emergency, that there's already something stashed away for you to use at that time. So you could have it either saved in that spending account if you're able to like roll over a balance over the months, or you could physically have something. And then that way you could say, okay, I thought this through, and every time I'm not feeling my best, I really need X, I need this. And then that way you could have one of those like in your house, for example. And then that way on those days you can go to the thing that you already have rather than not being in the best place emotionally and then making a choice to where you would, quote, overspend for the moment, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the budgeting resource that I can provide to you. And hopefully you can build in a really good system that makes sense for you, that would work for you long term. And then are you familiar with the concepts of like emergency fund and sinking fund? Have you used that, or are you familiar with those?
I'm familiar with the terms, but I don't think I've actually ever had an emergency fund per se.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so it's really important that for your emergency fund and sinking fund, and again, these can be the same or separate accounts. And it's really important that that be a high yield savings account, if you're familiar with that. So the high yield savings account means that your money is earning much more because you've taken the time to go research a bank or a financial institution that offers that. Because most of the big name banks, they only allow you to earn like 0.01% of interest,
Mhm.
which is criminal. And so making sure that your money is saved and sitting in a high yield savings account will earn you, it's more, sometimes it's one of those things referred to as free money, because your money is earning helpful and useful interest just for being saved for whatever it is that you need to use. So the emergency fund means that you've saved, 3 months worth of expenses or 6 months worth of expenses, just whatever it is that you can tuck away in case the worst were to happen and you need to go use it for something, whether it's for, an emergency car repair, because obviously you got to have your car to get you where you need to go, a medical emergency, if you were for some reason need it, for rent, things of this nature.
Mhm.
And then the sinking fund means that you have something in the future that you already know that you need to spend money on. And then this gives you a period of time to save up for it. So this can be something like a new car that you want to buy, or a big vacation that you want to go on, just whatever it is that you might need to spend money on, but it's a big chunk of money. So you do need time to save up for it. And again, it's important to have that in some type of high yield savings account because that accrued interest will help you get to that goal faster.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's really important to understand very, very specifically what would occur in real life, what you might need that money for. That way, again, you know where your boundaries are, where your right and left lane limits are of what that money can be used towards. And then again, this is our plan B for when something might happen and we might need a little help. So that's why it's really important to have that type of account.
Mhm. Yeah, I think my savings account right now, it was like 4%, but went down to three something, which I
Yeah.
guess is better than most of them, but I'll look into higher ones if they exist.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's okay. It's normal for them to fluctuate over time. So it's normal for it to be 4% sometimes, 3% another. But as long as it's high yield, then it's much better than it being in a traditional savings account. So you
Mhm.
sounds like you're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hard to keep it in there, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard when you don't have a very traditional job at the moment and you're trying to, finish school and finish your internship. Like, of course, it's very hard in these moments. But thankfully, it's not hard always.
Yeah, and just being knowledgeable about it is a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would get into next is investing, like investing more long term in the future, unless you have some type of more short term money question that I could help with.
No, I'm good with investments.
Okay, great. So are you comfortable with how the long term investing works? Like, are you good in that aspect of steps that you would need to take to invest for retirement or make more longer term investments?
I don't know. Yes and no. It's
Okay.
crunchy. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So, of course, we have the very traditional, more employer-based retirement funds. So that's like the 401k and the 403b, things of this nature. And so that means that those are retirement accounts tied to your employment, your employer. And then you have IRAs. And so those are things that you can set up yourself. And again, those are meant for retirement one day. So you have your traditional IRA, which means it's pre-tax money. And then you have the Roth IRA, which means that you pay taxes now in order to not pay taxes on that money in the future. And then you have your brokerage account. And so this is just something that you can set up, and it doesn't necessarily have to wait for retirement. So a brokerage account is sometimes what's used by people who retire early. Because whenever you take money out of that account, whatever you're taxed on, it's much lower than how you're taxed as an employee. And so that's why it's okay in order to use that money because it's taxed less in order to wait and get you to retirement to then use the more traditional retirement accounts. So those are like the three main buckets that people use to invest in order to get themselves the nest egg, the amount of money that they need one day to retire. And
Mhm.
again, that's a choice that everyone can make about when they want that to happen. So some people want to opt out as soon as possible. They say, life is short. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I want to enjoy as much time as I have. And so they work really, really hard to be able to leave the workforce as soon as possible. And of course, that means different things to different people. So some people don't want to work at all. And then other people just want to work part time. Sometimes people they call it barista-fi. And so it means that they might just work at a coffee shop for like 4 hours a day, like 3 days a week. And then other than that, they can live on their investments and they have a very happy life doing that. And of course, a lot of people are digital nomads to where they're able to work from wherever. And then other people, they really enjoy working. They want to work for very long periods of time. And so they don't try to front load their investments. They just do consistent small increments over time. So it just depends on whatever it is that you want your life to look like.
Mhm.
So whenever you do your investments, hmm, are you currently at a place in your life to where you could be making investments, or do you need some more time to get through school?
Mm, I think it's possible. Have I have some experience with investing, but I have like I guess I have a negative view on it because it just not in general, but what happened to me wasn't great. And
Oh,
then the impulsivity mixed in and not having a steady income, I think I get overwhelmed by the idea of it. So like when I have a full-time job and the 401k and those traditional things, it's like you're not thinking about it. That's easier, of course, but doing it on my own and not having a steady income, it feels, I guess, not as like doesn't make as much sense to me, but I want to get in the habit of it and not have this negative thing like that happened to me, I don't know, 4 years ago. I want to let that go and not just be like, I don't care about this stuff. And like, I need to care. I can't just ignore this stuff, especially as it's getting harder and harder for people to retire.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm really sorry that something negative happened to you. Like that's awful. I don't want that.
Well, I think I still learned a lot, but it, I don't know how to explain it, but I think I was just following the advice of someone that it didn't make sense.
Mm,
Take the advice, lifestyle differences.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, unfortunately, lesson learned. I also have many of those.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. So are you familiar then with like Vanguard? Like, did you use like a traditional investment platform, like a website or something?
No, this will probably explain things more. I was more involved with cryptocurrency.
Oh, goodness.
And it's not as bad as it sounds. Like things have gotten way scammy since then, but
Yeah,
I think around COVID, it was working really well for me. And then basically that ended up being my emergency fund,
I see.
which was nice, but it just felt sad. It was very volatile, basically.
Of course.
Yeah. And I think that's my main experience. So it makes sense that it was scary. And then, because it's not traditional at all and it's newer and yada yada. And then the 401ks,
Okay.
that you don't have to think about
Yeah,
so
yeah.
as much.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That makes sense. Have you had a 401k before? Have you done that before?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have control over that 401k or is it just like floating off there in a former employer's bank account or something or whatnot?
Yeah. I don't know if there's two or if they were merged, but they're definitely floating out there and I just haven't looked into it.
Ah, okay. Okay. That's another resource that I can send to you. I'm just going to make a quick note.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm basically like in la la land when it comes to those things because I guess it's hard for me. Like just with grad school too, it's like I can barely even think about eating enough food for the day. I don't know if it's overwhelm or it's not even that I just get very focused and become like one track minded when I'm in school.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I completely understand that. It's just it is what it is, you know.
Mhm.
It's one of those frustrating things to where you know you should be doing more, you know, to take care of yourself and all your
Yeah.
life things, but there's just not enough time in the day. So it's just one of those situations to where something has to be sacrificed. I also unfortunately sacrificed my health, you know, when I was in grad school because again, I could not figure out a way to do everything. It just wasn't possible. And that unfortunately was the ball that got dropped. I'm not happy with that. I'm not proud of that. But again, I couldn't figure out how to literally do everything,
Yeah.
which is, it's just unfortunate. It's just one of those unfortunate things of grad school. You just got to try to get through it as quickly as you can.
I am almost finished. It'll go by quickly. I just have like basically a year left. So.
Oh, that's good. That's exciting. Try
Mhm.
to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you to a website called Capitalize. I'm not affiliated with this website or this resource at all. However, it's a really helpful, legitimate resource. And what you do is you call this company and they move your money to your own account that you control. And the company that currently holds your 401k, they're responsible for paying Capitalize. So you don't have to come out of any money. And it's a really helpful, beneficial company that I do recommend to people. But like I said, I have no affiliation to them.
Well, that's exciting. It sounds like, see it like the part where I would get overwhelmed. I'm like, who do I have to call? What do I have to do this? I'm like, whatever, I'll figure it out later. So that sounds really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And so the piece that you do have to do before they can physically move the money for you, or you know, metaphorically, however you want to say it, move the money for you, is you do have to have your own personal account that you control for it to be moved to. And then that's the part right now that I can walk you through on how to do that.
Okay.
So what you would need to do is you would need to find a traditional resource, like I said, a company like Vanguard or Fidelity, some type of very traditional retirement account company, if you will, or broker. What you would need to do is open up the equivalent of the account. So like I said, if you have a traditional 401k, that means you would open up a traditional IRA. Because what you have to do is you have to match the type of accounts in order to not have a taxable event. That's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid unnecessarily having to pay taxes on the money. But again, if it's a Roth 401k, then you would open up a Roth IRA because again, like I said, it's got to match.
Okay.
And so once you open up this account, you would then need to pick the type of investments. And you truly only have to pick one, maybe two ETFs or exchange traded funds. And so, what this means, an ETF is a big bucket of companies. So, it could have 100 companies, it could have, 3,000 companies. And so what this means is your money is more stable because it's mitigating risk. It's minimizing your risk of having your money invested because it's spread out across hundreds or thousands of companies. So this way, Vanguard or Fidelity or whomever is owning and controlling that ETF, that exchange traded fund, it's their responsibility over time to make sure that that remains profitable for you. So that means if one of those companies that's in that big bucket no longer is doing very well, they take it away. That way you never have to think about it. And then they'll replace it with a company that is doing really well. And that very naturally happens across time. And so it's very easy to look up ETFs that have done well historically, because these have existed since the 90s, I think. And so you can see how they've been doing consistently across time. And so I can send you a couple examples just to help you with your research of which one you want to pick. And like I said, you only have to pick one or two. This is not something overwhelming or unmanageable. And so VU is one of the good ones. So if you ever look up VU, it's one of the Vanguard ETFs, and that, for instance, has done very well across time. So that's a very popular one that people pick. So once you've picked your brokerage and opened up the appropriate type of account, and then you pick your ETF, and then that's it. You literally don't have to do anything else with it. It can stay like that for many, many years if you're not having to do anything. And then once you've done those three things, then like I said, you can email or message Capitalize, and then they'll move your stuff over for you. And then you have control over it. And then that helps it to continue to grow over time because now you've actively invested it. So now, even if you're not actively contributing more money to that account, it does continue to grow in value over time.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds more productive than just leaving it where it is, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any questions that come up with that process?
So I do everything before I call the company Capitalize, but do I have to have money in there first?
No, you don't have to have any money in there. It can be empty.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the how to get started on your investments. Let's see. Have you ever heard the phrase why time in the market is more important than timing the market? Have you ever heard of a phrase like that?
No.
Okay. So the reason why time spent in the market, which means the time your money is invested, the reason why that's so important is because the sooner you're able to start investing, the more the money has time to grow. And that's what's so critical is that none of us can buy time.
Mhm.
So the longer we wait to invest, the more difficult it's going to be to retire because there's not going to be enough time left for the money to get to where we need it to be in order to comfortably retire. And so I just wasn't sure if you were familiar with this phrase or have ever spent any time thinking through what is your number? Like how much money do you estimate you might need one day to retire comfortably?
It's like so hard to answer that. I mean, that because things are changing so much, but I mean, it would be nice to just, I don't know, have a few millions in there, but who knows if that's realistic. But I think, I don't even know. That's so hard. So, like, if I'm like 65, how much money do I think I need if I don't want to work anymore? Obviously, I would still have investments making money off of that, but ugh, I don't think any number would make me comfortable. Because even if you have $1 million, that can go so quickly, honestly. Like, so I think I would definitely, I would want to see at least 300 grand, and then I would actively still be making money and just trying not to live above my means, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very difficult for me. So who knows? But yeah.
That's okay. That's really important to understand. So I'm also going to send you a website in order to play around with some numbers and it'll do the calculations for you. And I'll
Mhm.
link all these resources in the show notes too, just in case anyone else listening, if they need these resources as well. So a really common example that's given is $1.5 million. A lot of people say that they more or less would be comfortable retiring at the point where they had 1.5 million invested. Because what this means is that you can withdraw about $60,000 every year and more or less be comfortable because that's about $5,000 every month. So at least many people say that this is doable for them. That's at least, survivable, that's livable.
Mhm.
And like I kind of referenced earlier, with these retirement accounts, they're taxed at a much lower rate than how we're taxed as employees, as active workers. And so that's why you're able to play around with withdrawing certain amounts every year from these accounts and either not having to pay taxes at all or just being taxed very minimally, so 20% or less. And so that's why the majority of this money can remain invested and it can
Mhm.
continue to grow. Just because you've withdrawn, for example, $60,000 one year doesn't mean that it will only go down over time. Technically, you would have to withdraw more money for it to consistently go down over time. So it just depends. It just depends on how comfortable we are and how much we need to withdraw and whether or not we want to. There's a book out there called Die with Zero. So some people want to die with $0, left in the bank, and other people want that number to continue going up over time because we all have different thresholds of risk, different thresholds of anxiety, of the unknown. And so it just depends on who we are. But it is important to try to begin to think through these questions to know where we are on the spectrum of what would make us comfortable, of where we, no kidding, could say, okay, if I have this much money, I'll be okay. And
Mhm.
the reason why it's important to think this through, regardless of whether you want to retire early or retire traditionally, is we never quite know what's going to happen, especially whenever it comes to our health and the type of healthcare that we have access to. You might assume or be excited to work until you're 65 or 70, but none of us ever quite know if we'll physically be able to manage that. So the
Mhm.
earlier that we're able to start putting money away in order for it to begin compounding this interest, it's like the one time that interest works in our favor, the better off that we'll be, the more likely we are to be comfortable with whatever happens in our future.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, I'll give you a resource, a website where you can play around with these numbers and start to understand and see what it would take, how much money it would take to begin saving to get you to where you want to be one day. And another helpful example in order to picture what this takes is that, for example, if someone saved $500 to $600 every month, just saving that in a savings account, it would take you about 100 years to get to $1 million. But if
Mhm.
you invested $500 to $600 a month, it would only take you about 25-ish, maybe 30 years to get to your 1 million.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's really important to invest as soon as you're able to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I look at money in a very abstract way because I get, I guess, overwhelmed and I'm just like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. But then, like, you might, it's like, how do you just figure it out if you don't have the resources when you need them? So, yeah, I need to look at things, I think, more concretely when it comes to money and not just the attitude of I'll figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a really good point. And even though it might be difficult to get started sometimes, it's just really important, like you said, to be very realistic and concrete about what is necessary in order to get started. Because even if it's something really small in the beginning, those early dollars, they really matter. Like those are our hardest working dollars to get them into the brokerage account or the retirement account to get that interest compounding in your favor. So even if it's just $5 or $20 a month, it still matters. It makes a difference long term in getting you to where you want to be one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It doesn't have to be that overwhelming or scary. And because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I don't have the bandwidth to think about investing when I don't have enough money. But really, it just takes, like you said, just get some money in there.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah, even it, some people think it doesn't make a difference, but it does. Even if it's just $5 a month, it will matter. It will make a difference, a positive difference in your future life. And what I was saying earlier about setting up a retirement account in order to get your money transferred to you to where you have control over it, to be honest with you, that's the same way that you would set up an investing account. So even with the same brokerage, one day when you're ready, when you have the extra funds to put it towards a brokerage account, for example, let's say that you went with Vanguard. Again, you would open up a brokerage fund with Vanguard and you could do a similar ETF type system where you just pick one or two ETFs and then again pick $50. Let's say you can do $50 a month and put it into the brokerage account. So even though it's the type of accounts are labeled differently, again, due to tax purposes,
Mhm.
the steps that you take to invest your money, the steps are the same. You open the account, you pick your ETFs, and then you automatically invest every month for whatever amount that you can put in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sounds simple enough. And I think it's all about starting and not using the excuse of like, I don't know what, like I don't know how to do. No one was really taught much on financial literacy, so on purpose, probably. So it's very
Yes.
empowering to dive into this and important for me not to ignore it because I think I'm letting my negative experience where I essentially lost a good chunk of money. Kind of, I don't know why that's not a good attitude. I don't know what that feeling is. I'll have to explore that more where it's like, well, like something bad happened, so I don't want to do it. I guess it's normal. I don't know how to explain it, but either way, you like investing is important. So I don't know what the blockage is for me there. It might be tied into like taking care of myself, like eating enough, going to the gym. So I need to explore why I'm like resistant to taking care of myself. It's very strange. So,
Yeah, I think just because there was harm, your avoidance of it is a way for you to believe that you're protecting yourself.
mhm.
And so it might be some type of correlation like that to where
Yeah.
there was harm. And so this might be your way of believing that you're protecting yourself from further harm like this of losing money. And
Mhm.
that's completely understandable. That honestly is a big reason, a very common reason as to why people avoid making investments is because they hear of or have experienced, unfortunately, just losing money that it has
Mhm.
happened before. To your point, we're not taught financial literacy because it ensures that we have to work the full 40 plus years. If we
Mhm.
don't learn how to make these investments, then we're trapped. We're trapped in a system that causes us and forces us to work for, the majority of our lives.
Mhm.
And it's important to try to pre-plan out important bucket list items because sometimes all of our big things that we want to accomplish in life can't wait until we're 65. Sometimes the
Mhm.
really big, important things, big, important life events that we want to experience have to be when we're young and physically fit, physically able to do whatever the big life event thing is. And
Mhm.
so that's why knowing that you have put aside money to do a big, important thing is there, as well as future investments that you're making to make sure that when you do reach your retirement age, that you're also prepared for that as well. And so that's why thinking about your life in different, 5 year chunks or 10-year chunks is just as important as the big, 30 plus year chunks as well.
Mhm.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's,
I think it's more important because, like you said, you don't know what's going to happen. An accident might happen and you can't work when you're like 50 or whatever. So I'd rather focus on like just the chunks, like the next 3 to 5 years.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, still have to
exactly.
think about the big stuff, but yeah, I think it's more important.
Yeah, yeah. Some things are time sensitive. And so you don't want to miss out on something just because you keep putting it off and keep putting it off until the age, 65 plus. Sometimes we need a young, physically fit, healthy body to do something that is important to us.
Mhm.
And I understand that there's always some type of privilege caveat in there. It just depends on who we are and the life that we've been given. So I do understand that there are various
Mhm.
privileges assumed in this conversation, but we just try to have to, like you
Yeah.
said, prepare rather than avoid.
Yeah, I've definitely been avoiding a lot of those things, but I do think my main investment experience, like I said, was volatile, but this sounds way more stable, and there's not as much risk with it, and I don't even have to think about it. Like you said, they're in charge of seeing what EFTs I think you said are good and which ones aren't, and they'll take your money out of the bad ones. So that's great that you don't have to think about it and it's spread out, so it's not again as risky because it's spread out. So that feels a lot better for me already.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's much more traditional in that sense, and it can be automated. So that way you don't have to think about it or accidentally, spend money that you wanted to invest on something that's very fleeting or temporary.
Mhm.
And thankfully, financial literacy is much simpler than what a lot of people would a lot of the messaging that's out there. Like it's a very simple skill that anyone can learn. It's not big and complicated because again, there's big complicated messaging out there just because people want to make money off of that naivete. And that naivete is built into the system, unfortunately. But it really is simple. It really is doable for yourself or anyone else that wants to learn how to do this themselves. So I'm really excited that you want to take this step and get yourself into a better system that works for you, that matches your values now and will match your values in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel a little lighter about the future, I
Oh,
guess.
that's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. I'm so happy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up today?
not at the moment. No.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was equal parts exciting and I guess I won't say dreadful. I have a lot to reflect on and need to tune into my logical brain more than the intuitive emotional brain.
Yeah, just that balance between the two. Both are equally important. There's just a time and a place. I want to thank you so much for joining me this week on Forecasting for Success and let you know that you can read the transcript for each podcast episode on my website, which is linked below in the show notes. I've also included the link to send me your money questions if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. And if you're ready to get started on improving your financial literacy and developing your own personalized money plan, I encourage you to join my Forecasting for Success community, where I teach you everything you need to know about budgeting, how to choose your retirement number, how to invest in the stock market, and so much more. I go live in the community each month to check in on your progress and help answer any questions you may have. And it's a supportive community where you can also check in with other members and learn from their experiences as well. I hope you take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next week.